Thanks for stopping by Pete's Garage. In this video, I'm going to be installing the cam bearings in the block. Now, a couple things you should be aware of, or you should take care to do when you're installing your cam bearings. First, you want to take them all out, clean them, and inspect them to make sure there is no damage to the bearing surface. Return them if there's any scratches, gouges, or imperfections. Second, you also want to clean and inspect the bores where the bearing is going to go. Make sure there's nothing wrong inside any of those bores so the bearing will press in. Then, make sure you keep them in order. The cam bearings are not all the same size. So, mark your box back to front so you know, and keep them in that order all the time. After you finish cleaning them, you want to mark the center of the oil holes on the bearing itself. You can see that. Mark the center of the bearing of the hole on the outside of the bearing, because you need to line that up with the line that you put inside the block that shows the center of the hole in the block. You have to make sure these holes line up. If they don't line up, you won't get proper lubrication to the cam. So that's a critical part of putting the cam bearings, as lining up the oil holes. Also, pay attention to the bearing, because like this bearing, this is the first, second, third, fourth bearing in. It may have more than one holes. On a 440, this has 3 holes on it, so there's 3 holes that have to line up, and they're not symmetrical. So you have to make sure you put this one in the right way. So we're going to put these in. What I'm going to do is I'm going to install all the back ones first. You go work back to front, and then what I'll really do is show installing the front one, because you simply cannot get the camera in there, get a good visual on there while you're working. And if you see how the front one's installed, the other ones are identical to the same. After I get these installed, we'll put the cam in to make sure it rolls fine. And the last step before we can put it onto the engine stand to continue with the build is to put the rear cap on that holds the cam in place. That's the thrust, let's call it the thrust cap, where the cam thrusts backwards towards the back of the engine. Now, cam bearing installation tools are not very expensive. You can get a decent one for 100, 150 bucks if you're not going to do it very many times, and they can cost up to several hundred depending on the brand and what it's going to be used for. If you're not comfortable, you're not sure you want to tackle this yourself, while you have your block being machined, you have to take your rods and parts, pistons, when the block is being machined. You can also take the bearings and have the machine shop install the cam bearings to make sure it's done right, if you don't feel comfortable doing it yourself. But this is something you can do yourself if you're careful and take your time. Get yourself a nice cam bearing installation tool, mark the block, mark the bearing, take your time, align up the oil holes. I'll show you how I'll do that, and how far you need to drive it in to make sure the oil hole matches the oil hole from the crankshaft so they line up. This is going to be the basic process. I have a line on the front of the block where the oil hole is, the lubrication hole. You can see it comes down from the oil pump. I will have the line on the bearing. I will have it on the installation tool. You line that up and you basically just press it into place. Then when you're done, you can shine the light down the hole from the cavity and make sure that the hole is lined up with the hole in the block. Now the front one is put on from the back, so you can use the centering cone, and you just put a black line on the tool so you can line up the hole on the bottom. After you set the bearing, you can back this out just to make sure the oil hole is on line, and it is. Perfect. With a little oil on our camshaft and on the bearings on the inside, we'll gently slide this into place. Make sure that it moves nice and smooth. There we go. Turns nice and smooth. Now I can put the plug in for the back of the camshaft on the back of the block. That's what holds the camshaft in when it's being thrust to the rear. I already have the 2 pipe plugs in. Those are just put in, and I used Permatex thread sealant. That's all I use for that. And for around the inside of this hole, I'm going to use the same thing, the Vibratite core plug sealant. Do that the same way. Put it on the inside of the hole. And this has got to go up to that pocket, up to that shoulder in there. So I want to make sure I have enough on here. All the way around. Goes on the core plugs. Make sure there isn't any on the face. We don't want any on the back of the cam, so that'll be nice and clean. Okay. Like the rest of it out. Okay, cam bearings installed, core plugs installed, and pipe plugs installed. Now we can put it on the stand and start assembling it. And don't forget, before you leave, always cover your engine. Thanks for stopping by Pete's Garage.